Hey everyone, it's Chaz. I just wanted to show you in a quick video a more advanced situation where you might still be able to use VLOOKUP. So first of all, if you recall, VLOOKUP has 4 arguments, and the first argument shown in blue is the value that you're about to try to look up, or the value you're going to search for. The second argument is the table where you're going to search. And then once you find the value from the first argument, you then need to display something. So the third argument says which column to display. So in this case, it says 2, which means from this table in the red box, it's going to count to column 2, and that's the value it's going to display. And the last argument just asks if it's okay to use partial matches. Most of the time, you will say false, meaning you want an exact match. Okay, so I want to show you an example, and I'm using this tennis data here. If you're familiar with this data already, I have made a change to it just for the sake of this example. So here I have a table of tennis matches. If you've worked with this data before, you may have noticed that I changed the name of this sheet instead of matches to tennis matches, and it's just to make things easier for a future video or shadowing. But here in this sheet, I have ID numbers of players who won matches and then ID numbers of the player who lost that match. And my task here is to display the name of the winner and the loser. So I'm going to show you the player table. And I did make a change to it. You can see in this case, the player ID is not in the first column. So you would think that this might be a problem. However, I'm trying to use the player ID to display a name. And the name is to the right of the player ID. So technically, I can still use VLOOKUP. Let me show you how it's done. Let's come back to the tennis matches sheet. And here for the winner name, this is where my VLOOKUP function is going to go, equals VLOOKUP. First argument is the value that I'm going to look up. It's just going to be the value in that same row under ID winner, then a comma. Then it asks for the table array. I must choose the table that I want to look up values from. It's in the player's sheet, so I'm going to click over to the player's sheet. And this is where I need to be careful because VLOOKUP always searches the first column of your table. So if I choose this entire table, it's going to search for that player ID in the birthday column. And we don't want that. We want it to search in the player ID column. So what I can do is actually just select this part of the table from column C to column J. I can start the table at column C and just ignore column A and column B. I'm allowed to do this. And then since I chose column C to be the start of my table, then technically that's the first column. So VLOOKUP thinks the first column is player ID, and that's what we want. So I'm going to go back to my formula and hit the comma. And then it's asking for the column index number. It wants to know which column to display. And here I need to be careful again, because according to the table that I selected, the first column is not column A. The first column is column C. So column index 1 is column C, the player ID, since that's the first column that I chose for my table. So I need to count from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the name is in column index 6. So I'm going to type a 6. And then the last argument just wants exact match or partial. I'm going to use false for exact match. Close the parentheses, and when I press enter, there's the name. And it still worked because I used this partial table to be the table for the VLOOKUP. And in this case, the partial table has the player ID as the first column. So the search works. And then I counted my columns from column C. So column C was considered index 1. And I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I typed the number 6 as my index. So the display value worked and everything is good. So even though the value you want to look up is not in the first column, sometimes you can still use VLOOKUP. So some of you might be asking, well, what if the value that I'm searching is not in the first column, just like we saw, but the value I want to display is not to the right? What if it's to the left? Wait, I'm on camera. What if it's to the left? Well, we can't use VLOOKUP for that, unfortunately, but Stay tuned because I got another video coming out today to show you how it's done. Until then, I'll see you next time.